Okay, yeah, so I put out a video the other day, and here's the thing. So that you are free in Christ, you are finished work, you are given the Comforter, the mind of Christ, you are taken out of this world spiritually, you are reborn. You then, unfortunately, but necessarily have to then deal physically with this place and those that also roam around this place. So I did this video to show you something. Alright, so I'm going to explain it a little bit further, only in that I've already told you everything. And every further word is really just an amplification of that, or a subtraction, really, depending on if somebody's confused. Because if somebody gets confused, that's really steps back. Because it's like, if you understood it yesterday, if you were free in Christ yesterday, what then in your life allowed you to overstep His grace? That would be my question, really. So to move forward, I show you that your mind then gets clouded. And these 8s mean something. That's add them up. 24. That's a cycle. But you're in a tritone cycle. You're in a fallen cycle. All right. So then, how is that cycle built? But through the colors I've talked to you about. All right. The idea of the red within this world is the idea of the fallen love. That's this hoax concern you see now with this stupid play act that's happening on the streets. It's all hoax, fake concern. That's that idea of red. The law, the blue, law and order. All right? That comes into the system. All right? Because then that balances. All right? The green, or the idea of concern, is shared by both. Right? Do you understand then how this fallen opinion cannot work? It is an unstable system which is constantly out of balance, which is why it's constantly being tweaked and brought in and out of tune and tone. All right, so then this construct is now created and a stage is set, because the idea that has been brought into you by your own free will needs a place to live, needs a place to perform, needs a place to show you what it's all about. So then that stage is set in your mind. And this all happens right now. Every single time, every thought you have, this happens. Because look at the thought you just had. It is presented to you on a stage. You are looking at a presentation. That is what your thought is. Okay, so the stage is set, but it's also, always look at the reflection of that. It's also the idea of the plumb bob, the idea of the weight of the world being brought onto you for no good reason, because these are not your weights to bear. All right. So the next stage is painted with the fallen love of this world. It's weighted completely with the fallen hoax love of this world, because the love of this world weighs you down, because it is not true. It is not of God. All right. That stage is set with the 13 stars. The reason it's 13 is because that's your corona, that's your crown. That's what your idea of concern and idea of love is. But then do you see how that Sandy Hook got you? That's that first 7 I told you about. That first angle. Because you have to be concerned, but you need to know what the angle was about. What happened? Okay? That then mirrors into itself. It becomes the idea of the double 7. The idea of, you have to look at this really, if you can draw this yourself. Draw 2 7s out. Draw a line. Make a 5. Alright? Right? Because it's 14 into 5. Alright, draw another line. 2 7s. Alright, 14. Alright? So all of those mean something at some point, but you have to then reduce it. to the base to get just the point. All right, and the point is always to bring you into the idea of fully consuming this fallen idea, or idea of a cube, the idea of the 68, the idea of the sevens contained within the cube, all right, which then becomes a shark, because it preys on you. It's that idea. But do you see how I told you about the red and blue and the idea of the balance? But then do you see how the green is crept into the system, because it's prematurely taken over, because this is the serpent. All right, the serpent has consumed you, and it has reflected back to you a structure which you will now be trapped into. Do you see how the red is what has bled into the system? Do you see that? This red, that's you. That's your idea of your concern, your mind. I'm not talking about your body. I'm talking about your mind. Where is your mind? Because your body follows. That red is now within this trap. And I'll show you here. I'm going to show you what happens within here. All the different symbology and all the different ideas that you see all point back to this, because this is the base code I've told you about. This is how a thought is created. This is how a thought consumes your mind. All right? So you see it looks like a shark now, because now you have fully been consumed. But the blue is still in there, so it must be reflected. It must be a false rule of law. Because here is the thing. You have what you might call a moral compass, or a conscience, which allows you to do one thing or another. All right? While all things may be admissible to you, not all are profitable. That's what that means. So then you follow the rule that you love your Creator, your Father in heaven, all right, with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then you love your neighbor as yourself, meaning that I'm not going to ever lie to you about something. If I have nothing to say to you, I'm not going to speak. All right? That's what that means. So then this fallen idea consumes, but the blue's coming back. Now, do you see right here, the idea? Let me go back one. Do you see here, if I start here at the left side, on the left side of the mouth of the serpent, where the red is coming into contact with the bottom of what, if you follow your eye to your right, you will see leads up to a point, and then there's another gold line that leads back to this other red, which is on the left. Do you see how that makes what's called the Jacob's Ladder? What that is that's the beginning of this spark that's going to move up that Jacob's Ladder. And that's going to be your idea of your growing concern, because this serpent entangles itself in your mind and it grows your concern. Okay, so do you see that? I'll stop later and I'll show you what's inside. This is now that new idea of law. This is that new idea of the idea of the pyramid. The idea of, if you look back at the $1 bill, that idea of that grand scam. All right, but do you see how then that's been cast out and introduced as almost alien to the system? All right, because do you remember at the beginning you saw the true blue was overtaken, and now this is a false blue, or a reflection of law. It's a false fallen code of man, books upon books upon books of codes. Would you say, okay, I'm guilty of X, Y, Z, or 1, 2, 3? You have to look up the code to find out what they're speaking about. All right, that's what's being introduced now. All right, because if you believe a fallen concern of this world, it must follow the law of this world. Do you see how you're being trapped from all sides? And also, if you notice that in the red, these lines in here are just the idea of the active thought. Also within the green, that's an active beast that's forming itself. Do you see how the X is being formed? Because as this system is being engaged, your mind's going to become activated, and the webbing or the gold is going to increase in color, all right, or in in boldness. And then you will also see that the colors of concern, the colors of love, the colors of law will then interject through these veins as this thing grows. Okay? Onwards. Here we go. Next slide. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so anyways, there it goes. Keeps going. Okay, I wanted to add this because I told you that you're actually under the law here. The law's being introduced. And I added this shadow, and I'll show you that in a minute. Right here, do you see my thumb shadow I put right here on the upper left-hand side? You see the thumb shadow? What I'm saying is now that you're being put under the thumb of law, of man's law. Now that reflects this cage that you are now into. Do you see how you're behind bars? The double X idea and also the Jacob's Ladder idea. Just look at the lines. From left to right is Jacob's Ladder. From basically top to bottom is your two X's with your blood through the one X. That's your blood sacrifice. That's your time you gave to this lie. Okay? Do you see how then the blue now, the law by just nature, and do you see how the blue is now taking over? Because everything must follow a code if you're believing it within the system. That's why the blue's now taking over this screen of the serpent's face is your mind if you're under the influence of this serpent. You are that burning man laying down in there. Do you see him in there lying there? Do you remember that from Planet of the Apes? They had the same silly X, and that was the idea to scare you away from the forbidden zone. You know, don't go past here. That's also the X'd out eyes. Also, do you see how I have added in here in the corner, what looks basically, what makes it give is it the serpent eyes, is the idea of the 7, and there's a 7 on this side as well. That's your double 7 code, and they'll come and go as far as being colored, depending on the system. Because right now it's darkened on one side because this, of course, is the lie. Therefore, it's within the lie cycle. Therefore, it has to be fallen on one side. Do you see it fallen on this upper right-hand side? Do you see how it's collapsed? That's because it's a fallen, cockeyed system, and that's always the reason why they're covering their eye, the eye patch, that idea. All right. So, anyways, the idea here, which I've colored in with pencil, and the reason that you'll see it, there's a better picture actually, right here. These are the two active parts. This is your 43. This is your door. This is what you go through. This, and you can see in there, you can see the construction in there. You can see that it's active. You can see back into there all the piping, that it's a system. All right? The 43. All right? The 7 code I talked to you about. All right? Don't fall for it, man. So anyways, so that's what this picture's about. Do you see back here I'm creating a gate in the back of the snake's throat? That's because it's going to be recycled. You will be brought into here, and that story gets recycled back into, follow it around, back into the law. Because the law is built on precedent. So the hoax becomes what is the truth in this hoax lie system, and it goes through, back, gets returned and scooped into becoming law. That then falls into what, look here in the middle, the purple, or the idea of the fallen. This is really the instead of the mindset at the time of the hoax, the purple is the mindset overall. It's the overall webbing of the fallen man's mindset. Meaning that all the fake, they believe in space, they believe in war, they believe in all these wild ideas. All these wild ideas. They believe these things. That's that area. Alright?
So the boogeyman go boo.